In the remote village of Tanacu, Romania, a chilling story unfolded in 2005. A story of possession, exorcism, and death. A story that shook the very foundations of faith and the boundaries of human responsibility. This is the tragic case of the Tanacu exorcism, where belief in the supernatural collided with the harsh realities of human suffering, leading to irreversible consequences. Tanacu is a small, isolated village in northeastern Romania, nestled among the rolling hills and forests of the Moldavian countryside. Its residents, largely devout and traditional, have lived for centuries under the influence of the Eastern Orthodox Church. In this deeply religious community, faith is woven into the fabric of daily life. The small village was also home to the monastery of Tanacu, a relatively secluded Orthodox Christian monastery that became known for its intense religious practices. It all started in early May 2005, when Maricica Irina Cornici arrived at the monastery of Tanacu. But who was Maricica? Maricica Irina Cornici was born into a broken and a poor family. Not much is known about her parents, but it is believed that her father unalivied himself when they were just a kid, leaving Maricica and her brother as an orphan. There is no denying that Maricia's childhood was marked with uncertainty and darkness, something which came out to play later on in her life. When she was 19, she worked as a nanny in Germany, and then for a family in Banat. A friend of hers from the orphanage became a nun at the Tanacu monastery, and she encouraged her to also become a nun. Listening to her friend's advice, Maricica began to go to church and attend masses frequently. It was her visit to the church when she started to exhibit some strange behaviors. According to some records, she would giggle during the prayers. She even claimed to hear strange whispers during the Mass. At some instances, she claimed that she could see the Satan himself. By April, her mental state deteriorated, and the doctors at the local psychiatric hospital diagnosed her disease as schizophrenia. After a 2-week treatment, they released her into the care of the monastery. Maricia's friends also stated that she never exhibited any signs of mental illness. However, her brother testified that he was with her when he saw Satan go into her, and also maintained that she suffered from demonic possession. While some believed that Maricica was just suffering with a classic case of schizophrenia, a large number of people believed that she was actually possessed and tormented by the devil himself. Amongst the crowd was one Father Daniel Petre Corogianu. Father Daniel was a priest at the monastery. A charismatic and deeply religious man, Daniel had built a reputation as a spiritual leader who could perform exorcisms and heal people of spiritual afflictions. And just like many other people, Father Daniel believed that Maricica was indeed possessed by the devil. Father Daniel thought that it was not just a mental illness, but rather that Maricica was possessed by Satan. Well, in his own words, you can't take the devil out of people with pills. And so the exorcism begins. Father Daniel, who had performed exorcisms in the past, began preparing for what would become a brutal 9-day exorcism. The ritual, which was described by some as being extremely harsh, involved chanting, prayers, and physical restraint. Maria was tied to a cross in a small, secluded room of the monastery. Father Daniel believed that the exorcism could only be completed through suffering and endurance, so he and his assistants reportedly slapped, beat, and shouted at Maria throughout the ritual, convincing themselves that her pain would force the demons out. The exorcism was not an isolated incident, but part of an extended ordeal that stretched for several days. She was deprived of food and water, and was subjected to intense verbal abuse and physical punishment. Despite her weakening state, the exorcism continued. Father Daniel and the other members of the monastery believed that Maria had to endure the full ritual in order to be freed from her supposed possession. At times, Maria was reportedly delirious and unresponsive, but Father Daniel insisted that the demonic forces within her were fighting back, making the exorcism all the more necessary. According to the nuns present during the ordeal, Maricica herself begged to tie her up. Her wrists and forehead were then anointed with holy oil, and she was kept in the church for 3 days. They put a towel into her mouth to stop her from cursing, and prayed to cast out the devil as they wet her lips with holy water. Maricica was then moved to her room and untied. She was, according to Father Daniel, cured. She was later given bread and tea and fainted after eating. The nuns could not awaken her, and feeling that her pulse was weak, they called an ambulance. While in the ambulance, she was administered 6 doses of adrenaline. By the time she reached the hospital, she was dead. The police were notified by the doctors at the hospital, who noticed the marks left on her wrists and ankles by the chains. The 2005 autopsy claimed that she had died of dehydration, exhaustion, and a lack of oxygen, showed clear signs of prolonged physical assault, including cuts, bruises, and marks from the restraints. The exorcism had pushed her body to the brink and beyond, ultimately leading to her untimely and tragic death. The news of Maria's death quickly spread throughout Romania, and authorities launched an investigation into the events surrounding the exorcism. Initially, the monastery tried to cover up the situation, claiming that Maria had died from natural causes. However, forensic evidence revealed the extent of the abuse she had endured. Father Daniel and several other individuals involved in the exorcism were arrested and charged with manslaughter. In 2007, Father Daniel was sentenced to 14 years in prison, though this was later reduced to 7 years on appeal. Several other members of the monastery, including nuns and monks who had assisted in the exorcism, were also convicted. The trial sparked a national conversation about the role of the Orthodox Church in Romania and the need for better regulation of religious practices. Many questioned how such extreme behavior could be allowed to occur within an institution that was supposed to provide spiritual care and guidance. The Tanacu exorcism serves as a cautionary tale, one about the dangers of religious extremism, blind faith, and the mistreatment of individuals suffering from mental health issues. It highlights the need for proper medical intervention, greater oversight of religious practices, and a broader societal understanding of mental illness. Maria's tragic death will forever be a reminder of the fine line between faith and delusion, between healing and harm. The case remains one of the most infamous examples of exorcism gone horribly wrong, and it continues to be a source of reflection for those who study the intersection of religion, psychology, and power. But what do you think? Is it just another case of mental issue being neglected because of blind faith, or did the devil really claim an innocent soul?